My name is Francine Thorne. I'm 29. 3 months ago, I called my parents from an emergency room with a fractured pelvis and 3 broken ribs. My mother told me she was at my sister's piano recital and asked if I could call an Uber. I spent 11 days in the hospital. 0 visits. When I got home, I found a bill on my doorstep. Not from the hospital. From my parents. For $287 in dog-sitting fees. That bill was the most expensive mistake they ever made, because what I mailed back cost them their house. Before I tell you how, please hit like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story, and drop your city and local time in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from. I didn't cry in that emergency room. I want you to understand that. I was lying on a gurney with glass in my hair, blood drying on my phone screen, and my mother was worried about a Chopin recital. I was past crying. I was past a lot of things. I just didn't know it yet. To understand why a $287 invoice destroyed a family, I need to take you back to the beginning. The Thornes lived in a 4-bedroom colonial in Weston, Connecticut. White siding, black shutters, wraparound porch that my mother photographed every October with mums and pumpkins for Facebook. The kitchen had a Sub-Zero refrigerator and quartz countertops. The living room had a Steinway Model B grand piano. The Steinway cost more than my car, but nobody asked how the kitchen that housed it got renovated. My father, Douglas, was a supply chain manager for a packaging distributor. Steady income, nothing spectacular. My mother, Vivian, did part-time interior decorating, mostly staging open houses for friends. But her real occupation was managing my sister's career. Kelsey was 23, fresh out of a conservatory in New England, and she was the center of everything. She played piano the way some people breathe, effortlessly, beautifully, and with the full expectation that the world would stop to listen. And in our household, it always did. I was a structural engineer at a mid-size construction firm in Stamford. I designed load-bearing walls and emergency stairwells, and occasionally drove to job sites in steel-toed boots. I made $82,000 a year. I lived alone in a 1-bedroom apartment with a cat named Bolt and a retriever mix named Pepper. My mother introduced Kelsey as my daughter, the pianist. She introduced me as my other daughter. At family dinners, the conversation orbited Kelsey like she was the sun, and the rest of us were just debris caught in her gravity. What competition she entered, what fellowship she was applying for, what her teacher at the conservatory said about her Debussy interpretation. I'd mention a project at work, a retrofit I was designing for a historic building downtown, and my father would nod and say, "So you're still doing the building thing?" The Steinway got tuned every 3 months. Nobody asked how the roof got fixed. It started when I was 22. Fresh out of Yukon, first engineering job, first real paycheck. My parents called on a Sunday. The roof was leaking. They'd gotten 3 estimates, and the cheapest was $18,000. My father had just been passed over for a promotion. My mother said they were stretched thin. I transferred $18,000 the next week. My entire savings from the summer internship and the first 4 months of salary. Vivian hugged me at the front door and said, "We'll add your name to the deed when we refinance, honey." When I was 24, my father lost his job. 5 months of unemployment. I paid the property taxes, $9,200, because the alternative was a lien on the house. Douglas shook my hand in the driveway and said, "I owe you, kiddo." When I was 25, my mother wanted the kitchen renovated. Kelsey was graduating from the conservatory, and Vivian wanted to host the party at home. The renovation ran $34,000. New cabinets, new countertops, new flooring, new appliances. I paid every invoice. Vivian stood in the finished kitchen and cried and said, "This is your home too, Francine." There were other amounts over the years. Emergency plumbing, $8,500. Kelsey's competition travel, $4,800. Landscaping that my mother said was needed for an appraisal, $6,200. Smaller things here and there, a new water heater, a fence repair, the driveway reseal. I Venmo'd every dollar, kept every text. Not because I was planning anything. Because I'm an engineer. We keep records. We document load capacities and material tolerances and structural failures. Keeping a paper trail is just how my brain works. The deed was never updated. Not once in 7 years. When I was 16, I won first place at the Connecticut Science Olympiad, state level. They called my name in a gymnasium full of 300 people, and I walked to the podium alone because my parents were at Kelsey's recital in Hartford. Nobody asked me how it went. I put the trophy on my dresser, and it sat there for a year until I packed it for college. My mother used the empty shelf for Kelsey's sheet music. That was the template. Every achievement of mine got the same response. Polite acknowledgement, then a redirect. I got promoted to lead structural engineer? That's nice, honey. Did you hear Kelsey got into the Tanglewood Fellowship? I passed my PE license exam on the first try. Congratulations. Oh, Kelsey has a callback for a recital series in Boston. There was one person who came to every single thing I ever did, and she wasn't family. Margot Delisle. She'd been my college roommate and was now a civil engineer at the same firm. She came to my PE celebration dinner. She was the one who bought me a bottle of champagne when I got promoted. She was the one who texted me at 11 at night after a hard day on site and said, "You're a damn good engineer and I'm proud of you." I showed up to family dinners straight from job sites sometimes, steel-toed boots, dust on my jeans, hands still smelling like concrete. My mother would wrinkle her nose and say, "Francine, you always smell like concrete. Can you at least change before dinner?" Kelsey would float in wearing a cashmere wrap, and everyone would talk about her Rachmaninoff. I kept showing up. I kept paying. I kept thinking that if I just did enough, eventually it would register. It never did. When I was 26, my father switched to a new employer-sponsored health plan. Family coverage. I assumed I was on it because I'd been on every family plan since I was born. 6 weeks later, I went to my doctor for a routine physical and got told at the front desk that my insurance was inactive. I called the plan administrator. They said I'd been removed during the enrollment period. I called my mother. Her exact words, "You're 26, Francine. You should have your own insurance. We needed to adjust the premium." She didn't tell me. Neither did my father. They restructured the family plan. They restructured me out of it. I spent 3 days navigating the individual marketplace and ended up with a plan that cost $380 a month with a $6,500 deductible. For a 26-year-old structural engineer with no health conditions, it was brutal. But it was the best I could find. I kept the email from my father that said, "Family Health Plan Restructuring, effective January 1st. 2 sentences, no warning, no phone call. Sent on a Wednesday, buried between a forwarded recipe from Vivian and a link to Kelsey's latest YouTube recital. They restructured me out of the family plan like I was a line item that no longer fit the budget. Kelsey stayed on the plan until she aged out at 26. When she did, Vivian personally researched options for her and helped her sign up. Kelsey told me this casually over coffee once, like it was nothing. Mom basically did the whole thing for me. You know how she is. I did know how she was. That was the problem. 6 months after they dropped me from their insurance, I was in an intersection at 7:42 on a Tuesday morning. March 4th. A Tuesday. I was on Route 57, halfway to the Stamford office, coffee in the cup holder, NPR on the radio. The light was green. I had the right of way. The SUV ran the red doing 45. It hit the driver's side door so hard the airbag deployed into my ribs before I registered the sound. Glass everywhere. The steering column twisted into my lap. I remember the taste of blood and the smell of powder from the airbag, and the radio still playing. Something about a municipal bond report, while I tried to move my legs and couldn't. The paramedics cut me out. Ambulance to Norwalk Hospital. 3 broken ribs on the left side. Fractured pelvis. An undisplaced fracture of the left superior pubic ramus, if you want the medical language. Severe soft tissue bruising across my abdomen and hip. I couldn't sit up. I couldn't walk. I couldn't turn over without help. In the emergency room, I called my mother. My phone screen was shattered. I had blood on my fingers from a cut above my eyebrow. It rang 4 times. Francine, hi. We're at Kelsey's spring recital. Can this wait? Mom, I was in a car accident. I'm in the ER. I have broken ribs and a fractured pelvis. Pause. I heard applause in the background. Then, honey, Kelsey is about to perform Chopin. Can we talk about this tomorrow? Can you call an Uber or something? Mom, I can't walk. Francine, you're always so dramatic. Text your father, I'm hanging up. The line went dead. I stared at the ceiling. A nurse asked if she could call someone for me. I texted my father. He replied 3 hours later. Your mother said you're fine. We'll check in later. Later never came. Surgery on day 2. An orthopedic surgeon pinned my pelvis with 2 titanium screws. I woke up on a morphine drip, cotton-mouthed, alone, staring at a whiteboard that said Nurse, Deborah and Pain. Goal, 4. I didn't know what a pain goal of 4 felt like. Everything was an 8. 11 days total. I texted my parents every morning for the first 5. Simple messages. Surgery went well. PT starts Thursday. They might discharge me Monday. Read receipts on, blue check marks. One response. A text from my father on day 4 that said, okay, get well soon. Margot came 5 times. She brought my laptop so I could email my project manager. She brought Thai food when the hospital trays made me nauseous. She brought a book of crossword puzzles and sat in the vinyl chair next to my bed, doing them out loud while I drifted in and out of sleep. On day 3, she looked at me and said, "Where the hell are your parents, Frankie?" I didn't answer. She didn't push. On day 6, I stopped sending updates. On day 7, nobody noticed. My mother posted on Facebook the day of my surgery. I know because Margot showed me, jaw tight, phone tilted toward my bed. It was a photo of Kelsey at the recital, mid-performance, spotlight catching the curve of the piano lid. The caption read, "So proud of our girl." 63 likes, 12 heart reacts, 1 comment from Aunt Patricia. She's going to be famous. I was in post-op when that was posted, learning how to use a bedpan. On day 9, a nurse asked me to confirm my emergency contact. I looked at the form for a long time. Then I crossed out my mother's name and wrote Margot's. The phone calls started on day 8, not from my parents, from their version of me. Uncle Richard called first. My father's older brother lives in Fairfield, sells commercial insurance, gruff but decent. He opened with, "Hey, kiddo, your mom said you got a fender bender?" I was lying in a hospital bed with a catheter and 2 titanium screws in my pelvis. Uncle Richard, I have a fractured pelvis. Silence. Then, she said it was a scratch. She said you were being dramatic about a minor accident. I've been here 8 days. More silence. The kind that means someone is recalculating everything they've been told. Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, called next. Different tone entirely. Francine, your mother told me you refused to go to Kelsey's recital and made up some excuse about a car accident. She's very hurt. I closed my eyes. I was too tired and too medicated to fight. I'm at Norwalk Hospital, Aunt Patricia. Room 412. You're welcome to verify. She didn't. That was the thing about my mother. She didn't just leave me in that hospital. She rewrote the story so nobody would know she left. In Vivian's version, I was fine, I was difficult, and I was jealous of my sister. In Vivian's version, there was no fractured pelvis. There was just Francine being dramatic, as usual. By day 10, Margot was keeping a notebook. Dates, times, who visited, who called, who didn't. She kept it in her bag in a moleskin with a green cover. I asked her why. She looked at me over the top of her reading glasses and said, "Because somebody should." I was discharged on day 11. My parents never came. Not on the first day, not on the last, not on any day in between. Margot picked me up from the hospital in her Subaru with the seat pushed all the way back so I could ride semi-reclined. The walker went in the trunk. The discharge paperwork went in a bag on my lap. Prescriptions, physical therapy referrals, wound care instructions, a follow-up appointment card for the orthopedic surgeon. I felt every bump in the road in my pelvis. My apartment was cold. I'd left in an ambulance 11 days ago and the thermostat was set to 62. Mail had piled up on the floor beneath the slot in the door, a small avalanche of envelopes, catalogs, flyers. Pepper wasn't there. I'd arranged for my parents to watch him weeks before the accident, during a work trip. The accident happened 2 days before the trip. Margot helped me onto the couch, made tea, sorted the mail into stacks, hospital bills, insurance letters, credit card statements. And then she stopped. She was holding a cream-colored envelope with my name on it in handwriting I recognized. My mother's cursive. The loops were perfect, like they always were. She opened everything with a letter opener, even junk mail. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed, formatted like an invoice. At the top it said, Thorne Family, Pet Services, with our home address. Below that, description, emergency pet boarding for Pepper, March 5th to 16th. Amount due, $287. Please remit within 30 days. My mother billed me for dog sitting while I was in the hospital, with broken ribs and a fractured pelvis and 2 titanium screws holding my body together. Margot read it over my shoulder. Her hands went to the back of her neck. Are you kidding me? I folded the invoice, set it on the counter. Something shifted, not in my heart, in my head. That night, after Margot left, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and a mug of cold coffee, and I did what engineers do when something fails. I ran the numbers. Venmo history, bank transfer confirmations, text messages, 7 years of transactions, laid out in a spreadsheet with dates and amounts and descriptions. Roof repair, year 1, $18,000. Property taxes during Dad's unemployment, year 2, $9,200. Kitchen renovation, year 3, $34,000. Emergency plumbing, year 5, $8,500. Kelsey's competition travel, year 5, $4,800. Landscaping, needed for an appraisal, year 6, $6,200. Assorted smaller amounts across all 7 years. Water heater, fence, driveway, miscellaneous requests that always started with, Francine, we're in a tight spot. Roughly $9,300. Total, $90,412. I stared at the number. Then I stared at the invoice for $287 sitting next to my laptop. $90,412. That's what I'd poured into a house that didn't have my name on it, into a family that didn't visit me in the hospital. And in return, I got a bill for my dog. But it was the landscaping that stopped me. Needed for an appraisal, my mother had said. I'd written the check without asking questions. I always wrote the checks without asking questions. What appraisal? We weren't selling the house. We weren't refinancing. At least, nobody told me we were. I typed it into Google at 11:40 at night, sitting in an apartment I could barely walk across. Appraisal before HELOC. Home equity line of credit. A loan against the equity in your home. You need an appraisal to establish the home's value before the bank approves the credit line. My parents took out a loan, against the house, and I paid for the landscaping that made it possible. I called a lawyer the next morning. If you're listening to this and you just thought of someone, a sibling, a parent, a family member who takes and never sees what you give, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button, not for the algorithm, for you. Because recognizing the pattern is the first step. Now, should I have just paid the $287 and moved on? Or was I right to open that spreadsheet? Tell me in the comments. I called my mother on a Wednesday afternoon. I was standing at my kitchen counter because sitting still hurt more than standing. Pepper was asleep at my feet. Mom, I received your invoice. Good. Her voice was clipped, efficient. I could hear dishes in the background. Pet boarding isn't cheap, Francine. and you're the one who asked us to watch Pepper when you travel for work. I was in the hospital, with a fractured pelvis, for 11 days. And we had to make other arrangements for your dog. We brought him to that kennel on Post Road. That costs money. I leaned against the counter. My ribs ached. I could feel the screws in my pelvis every time I shifted weight. You didn't visit me, not once. A pause. One beat of silence, the kind where a normal parent would say something about regret. Then, we were busy with Kelsey's showcase preparation. You know how important this season is for her career. Besides, you had Margot. You were fine. There it was. I was fine. I was always fine. Fine enough to write checks. Fine enough to skip. The showcase? I kept my voice level. What showcase? That's when she slipped. We're organizing a benefit concert at the Arts Center, Kelsey's debut album fundraiser. It's going to be a major event for the community. Actually, we were going to ask you about the catering budget. Around $2,500 should cover it. She billed me $287. She didn't visit me for 11 days, and now she wanted $2,500 more. Mom, I'm going to hang up now, and I'm going to handle this differently than you expect. Handle what? Francine, don't make this about you. It's always about you. I hung up, and I made an appointment with a property lawyer named Nathan Caldwell. The group chat appeared 2 days later. Vivian added me to a thread with Uncle Richard, Aunt Patricia, 3 cousins, and Douglas. The subject line was a string of piano emojis and a heart. Her message was pinned at the top. Family, Kelsey's Showcase Benefit Concert is May 15th at the Weston Community Arts Center. This is her launch into professional music, and we need all hands on deck. Contributions, volunteering, ticket sales, every bit helps. Then, tagged directly, Frankie, we're counting on you for the catering budget, $2,500. You always come through for family. I read it 3 times. She posted it publicly in front of the entire extended family, a demand dressed as a compliment, and the emoji heart at the end, like it was a gift I should be grateful to give. I didn't reply. Within the hour, the private messages started. Aunt Patricia, don't be difficult, hun. Your mother is so stressed with all the planning. Cousin Emma, just pay it, Frankie. It's easier. Easier. That was the word my family used when they meant stop having needs. Uncle Richard didn't message. I noticed that. He'd gone quiet since our phone call at the hospital. I filed it away. I screenshot every message in that group chat, the pinned request, the tag, the private follow-ups, the implied obligation. I saved them in a folder on my laptop alongside the Venmo records and the text messages and the insurance email and the invoice for $287. I screenshotted every message, not for revenge, for my lawyer. On the cracked screen of a phone I still hadn't replaced from the accident, my mother's words glowed up at me. You always come through for family. She was right. I always had. That was about to change. Nathan Caldwell's office was on the 3rd floor of a brick building on Main Street in Norwalk. No marble lobby, no view of the harbor. Walnut desk, framed bar admission on the wall, a rubber plant in the corner that was either thriving or plastic. I couldn't tell. He looked about 42, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, and when he shook my hand he didn't squeeze too hard, which I appreciated because everything still hurt. Margot had gotten me the referral. Her uncle was an attorney in Bridgeport who knew Nathan from bar association events. I'd come in for the car accident. The other driver ran a red light, clear liability, and I needed someone to manage the personal injury claim against his insurer. Nathan listened to the accident details, took notes, said it looked like a strong case. Then he asked about my financial picture. Income, expenses, debts, insurance situation, standard intake. I opened the spreadsheet on my phone. He leaned forward, took off his glasses. Wait, go back. You contributed $90,000 to a property you don't own? I walked him through 7 years. The roof, the taxes, the kitchen, the plumbing, every Venmo transfer, Every text message where my mother promised to add my name to the deed. 43 of them, time-stamped. Nathan was quiet for a while. Then he said, 90,000, no deed, and they just asked you for another 2,500? And $287 for dog sitting, while I was in the hospital. He pushed his chair back from the desk. Miss Thorne, I think you have more than an insurance case here. Have you ever heard the term unjust enrichment? I hadn't, but I was about to learn what it meant, and so were my parents. Nathan pulled the property records from the Fairfield County Clerk's office. Public filings. Anyone can access them. It took his paralegal about 20 minutes. The results came back on a Tuesday afternoon. Nathan called me in. Your parents' home has a primary mortgage with a remaining balance of approximately $180,000, he said. But 14 months ago, they opened a home equity line of credit, a HELOC, for $120,000. I felt the number land in my chest. 120,000. Against the house. Against the equity in the house. Equity that your contributions significantly built. He showed me the filing. Douglas Thorne and Vivian Thorne, co-signers. Credit line, $120,000. Lender, a regional bank in Connecticut. The purpose field was blank. HELOCs don't require you to specify. But from the draw pattern, Nathan's paralegal had mapped roughly where the money went. Monthly draws of $8,000 to $15,000, starting right around the time Kelsey graduated from the conservatory. Studio recording sessions. A publicist. Competition entry fees. Travel to showcases in New York, Chicago, D.C. And now, a benefit concert to raise even more. My parents borrowed $120,000 against a house I'd poured $90,000 into, and they spent it on my sister's music career. They used my money to borrow more money, and they never told me. In legal terms, Nathan said, they enriched themselves with your contributions and then leveraged that enrichment for a third party's benefit, without your knowledge or consent. I stared at the county filing on his desk. The signatures were both there. My father's tight scrawl, my mother's perfect cursive. Nathan leaned back. Here's what we're going to do. And for the first time in 7 years, someone was on my side who knew how to win. That night I sat in my apartment with the lights off. Walker parked by the bathroom door. Pepper curled up at my feet, his chin resting on my ankle. The only sound was the refrigerator humming and traffic on the street below. I had a photo on the fridge, one of those curling snapshots from before everything was digital. Francine, age 10. Kelsey, 4. Our parents on either side of us at Hammonasset Beach. My father's hand on my shoulder, my mother squinting into the sun. Everyone smiling. That family existed once. I was sure of it. Not imagined, not projected, real. My father taught me to ride a bike in the driveway of that house. My mother let me help plant tomatoes in the backyard. There were years before Kelsey's talent was discovered, before the conservatory auditions and the competition circuit, when I was just their daughter, and that was enough. If I went forward with this, there was no coming back. They'd never forgive it. I'd lose them permanently. I was asking a court to say my parents owed me money, and courts don't care about Hammonasset Beach photos. But then I thought about physical therapy that morning. Walking the length of the clinic hallway with a physical therapist spotting me, my hips screaming, rain on the windows of the parking lot outside. Alone. No one waiting in the car. My phone buzzed. Vivian. I picked up, expecting, I don't know what, something human. Francine, about the showcase, we really need the catering deposit by Friday. Can you Venmo it tonight? She didn't ask how I was. She didn't ask about the hip, the therapy, the walking. She asked about Friday. I set the phone down. Pepper looked up at me. I scratched behind his ear. Not this time, buddy. Margot's apartment smelled like garlic and rosemary, and something burning slightly on the stove. She had plants everywhere, pothos trailing from shelves, a fiddle-leaf fig in the corner, herbs on the windowsill in mismatched ceramic pots. Her mugs were all different. The one she handed me said, "World's okayest engineer." I sat at her kitchen table, which was a reclaimed wood thing she'd found at a flea market, and I told her about the HELOC. She set down her wine glass very carefully. Let me get this straight. They took out a $120,000 line of credit against a house you put $90,000 into to fund Kelsey's music career, and then they asked you to cater the fundraiser. And they billed me for dog sitting while you were in the hospital. While I was in the hospital, Margot pressed her hands flat on the table. Frankie, what are you going to do? I don't know. Maybe I should just let it go. She looked at me the way she looked at bad rebar calculations, patient, but not willing to let it pass. You couldn't walk 2 weeks ago, and your mother's first phone call was about a catering deposit. What exactly are you letting go of? I didn't have an answer for that. She got up, went to her bag, and came back with a green moleskin notebook, the one she'd been keeping at the hospital. She opened it to the first page. Dates, times, every visit she'd made, every hour she'd sat in that vinyl chair. I kept notes, she said. Every day I came and they didn't. I knew you'd need them. I stared at the notebook. 11 days. Margot's handwriting, small and precise. You're not destroying anything, Frankie. They built this fire. You're just choosing not to burn in it. I called Nathan Caldwell's office at 8:05 the next morning. His assistant said he wasn't in yet. I said I'd hold. He picked up at 8:22. Francine, good morning. Let's proceed. A pause. I want to make sure you understand the implications. If we file, this will likely mean your parents have to sell the house. The equity math doesn't leave them many options. I understand. And the relationship? Nathan. I spent 11 days in a hospital, and my mother asked me to Uber myself home. The relationship is already gone. I'm not asking for their love anymore. I'm asking for what's mine. He said he'd begin drafting the demand letter that week. That afternoon, I texted my mother. One message, no preamble, no softening. I won't be contributing to the showcase, and I'll be responding to your invoice through my attorney. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, what? An attorney? For $287? Francine, this is insane. You're going to hire a lawyer over a dog-sitting bill? She thought it was about $287. She had no idea. I didn't reply. I set my phone face down on the counter and went to physical therapy. I did my exercises, hip flexion, partial squats, gait training with the parallel bars. My therapist said I was ahead of schedule. She asked what was motivating me. I told her I had somewhere to be in about 8 weeks. That night I ate dinner alone at my kitchen table, reheated soup, crackers, a glass of water. Pepper under the table, Bolt on the couch, quiet. She was right about one thing. It wasn't about $287. It was about $90,412. Let me ask you something. Francine just texted her mom that she's responding through an attorney. Her mom thinks it's about $287. It's about $90,000. When do you think Vivian is going to realize what's actually happening? When the lawyer's letter arrives? When she gets the list pendants? Or at the showcase? Tell me your prediction in the comments. And if you're still here, subscribe. This is about to get real. I walked into Nathan's office the following week with a manila folder and a flash drive. Inside the folder, 7 years of Venmo records printed from my transaction history, bank transfer confirmations from my checking account, 43 text messages, screenshotted and time-stamped, in which my parents either acknowledged a contribution or promised to add my name to the deed. Property records from Fairfield County showing the deed had never been amended. Nathan's paralegal, a sharp woman named Grace, organized everything into a timeline on the conference room table. It stretched 6 feet. Nathan walked the length of it, hands in his pockets. Then he turned to me. Here's the framework. Unjust enrichment. You conferred a benefit, $90,000. They were enriched, their equity increased, and there's no legal justification for them keeping it, because they promised you ownership and never delivered. The text messages where they said, "We'll add your name," those established the expectation. He laid out the options: file a civil suit for monetary recovery, essentially demand the money back; pursue a constructive trust claim, ask the court to recognize my proportional ownership in the property; or file a lease pendens, a public notice on the property title that flags pending litigation. It blocks any sale or refinancing until the dispute is resolved. I recommend the lis pendens first, Nathan said. It creates immediate pressure. If they have that HELOC, the bank will see the filing and freeze the credit line. I nodded. He also asked about my medical bills. I told him about the insurance, how they'd dropped me from the family plan without warning. His eyebrows went up. That's its own issue. We'll address it separately. The texts where they promised the deed, Nathan called them gold. 7 years of gold I never knew I was mining. The demand letter went out on a Thursday. Certified mail. Return receipt requested. 2 pages, single-spaced, on Nathan Caldwell's firm letterhead. It outlined every dollar, $90,412 in documented contributions. It cited the 43 text messages promising ownership interest. It referenced the property records showing no deed amendment. It demanded full reimbursement or an equitable ownership interest in the property. 30-day response deadline. I didn't send it. Nathan did. My name was on it as the claimant, but the voice was legal, measured, irrefutable. Facts and statutes, not feelings. 2 days later, my phone rang. My father. Francine. His voice was thin, shaking. I could hear my mother in the background, talking fast, but I couldn't make out the words. What is this letter? From a lawyer? Read it carefully, Dad. Your mother is beside herself. You can't do this. You can't sue your own family. I contributed $90,000. You promised me the deed. You never followed through. Those are facts. Those were gifts, Francine. Family helps family. Gifts don't come with promises of ownership, Dad. I have the texts. Silence. Then he said something that told me more than any legal filing ever could. If this goes forward, we have a line of credit. He stopped. I know about the HELOC, Dad. The silence stretched. I heard my mother say something sharp in the background. Douglas's breathing changed. Francine, please, think about what this does to your mother. I leaned against the counter. My hip ached. Pepper was watching me from his bed by the radiator. I spent 7 years thinking about what I was doing for your house. Now it's your turn. I hung up, and I meant every word. Vivian did what Vivian always did when she lost control. She called everyone. Within 48 hours, the family phone tree was fully activated. My mother's version went out like a press release. Francine is suing us, her own parents, after everything we did for her. She's trying to steal our home because she's jealous of Kelsey. Aunt Patricia called me crying. How could you do this? Your poor mother hasn't slept in 2 days. Cousin Emma sent a text. This is really selfish, Francine, tearing apart the family over money. My mother had been strategic. She didn't mention $90,000. She didn't mention the HELOC. She didn't mention 11 days in a hospital, or a fractured pelvis, or a phone call from the ER that ended with call and Uber. She just said suing and stealing and her own parents, and let the family fill in the rest. But Uncle Richard called too, and his tone was different. Frankie. A long breath. I talked to your mom. She says you're making all this up, that you gave them $5,000 over the years, as a gift, total. Uncle Richard, I have bank records for $90,000. Silence. She said 5,000? 5,000, that's what she told everyone. Another silence. Longer. Frankie, I'm going to look into a few things on my end. Don't do anything drastic for the next couple of weeks. Just let me make some calls. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't ask. Uncle Richard was the kind of man who moved slowly and didn't explain himself until he was ready. My mother was building a wall of family against me. Every cousin, every aunt, every holiday dinner seat turned into a jury box. But walls need foundations, and hers was built on a lie about $5,000. The 30-day deadline came and went. No response, no lawyer, no counteroffer, nothing. Vivian had told Douglas to ignore it. I learned this later from Uncle Richard, who learned it from Douglas himself during a phone call where my father, apparently, sounded like a man watching a house fire from the lawn. Vivian's position was simple. She'll back down, she always does. She was wrong. Nathan filed the lis pendens at the Fairfield County Clerk's office on a Monday morning. If you've never heard the term, a lis pendens is a notice recorded against a property's title that says, someone has a legal claim on this property, and it's unresolved. It's public, it's on the record. And anyone who runs a title search, a buyer, a bank, a lender, will see it. What that meant, practically, was this. Within 2 weeks, the bank holding my parents' HELOC ran a routine title check and found the filing. They froze the line of credit. No more draws, no more transfers. $120,000 in available credit shut off like a faucet. Douglas got the letter from the bank on a Wednesday. He called Vivian from the kitchen. I know this because Kelsey told me later. She was there, practicing in the living room, and heard the whole thing. What do you mean frozen? Vivian's voice carried through the house. We need that money, Douglas. The showcase is 5 weeks away. The venue deposit, the sound engineer, the programs are already printed. Douglas. Vivian, we need to call a lawyer. Vivian. We don't need a lawyer. We need Francine to come to her senses. I didn't freeze their credit line. The county filing did. The law did. I just told the truth and let the system do the rest. Kelsey called me on a Thursday night. She was crying before I picked up. I could hear the breath-catching stutter of someone who's been sobbing alone for a while. What are you doing, Francine? Mom says you're trying to take the house. I sat down slowly. My hip was better but not good. Pepper raised his head from his bed. Kelsey, how much do you think the showcase costs? I don't know. Mom handles the money. It's being funded by a $120,000 loan against the house. A HELOC. A house I put $90,000 into. Silence. The crying stopped, replaced by something heavier. What? $90,412. Over 7 years. Roof, kitchen, taxes, plumbing, the landscaping. I have Venmo records for every dollar. Mom told me you gave a little bit years ago, as a gift. I have 43 text messages where they promised to add my name to the deed. They never did. Long silence. I let it sit. Through the phone, I could hear the ambient hum of wherever she was. A practice room, probably. A piano bench. Her whole world. Why didn't you ever say anything? I looked at the ceiling. Because I was busy paying for the roof over your Steinway. More quiet. Then smaller. Mom says the showcase has to happen. She says it's my one chance. Kelsey, you're 23 years old. Nothing is your one chance. She didn't respond to that. I heard her breathing, processing. I didn't expect a resolution from this call. She'd been raised inside Vivian's narrative her entire life. You don't dismantle that in 10 minutes. Kelsey wasn't cruel. She was 23 and had never been told the price of the world she lived in. Vivian made the showcase happen anyway. She borrowed $2,500 from Aunt Patricia, pressured Uncle Richard's wife for another $1,000, collected donations through the group chat, which I'd muted weeks ago. She was a machine when it came to Kelsey. Nothing stopped her. Not a lawsuit, not a frozen credit line, not a broken relationship with her eldest daughter. The show would go on. The Weston Community Arts Center was a renovated church hall on the town green. 200 seats, rented Yamaha Grand for the stage, catering from a local Italian place, programs printed on glossy cardstock, Kelsey's headshot on the front, windblown hair, half smile, black turtleneck. Inside, a biography, a repertoire list, and a line at the bottom of the acknowledgments page that said, "Special thanks to Douglas and Vivian Thorne for their unwavering support." $90,000 of my money in that house, My name wasn't in the program. I had no plan to attend, no reason. I'd said what I needed to say through legal channels. Nathan was waiting for their response. The lease pendens was doing its work. There was nothing for me in that arts center. And then Uncle Richard called. It was the afternoon of the showcase. I was on my couch, Pepper beside me, reading a structural report for a project in Bridgeport. Normal Wednesday. Frankie, I need to tell you something. Uncle Richard's voice had changed since our last conversation. Something had settled in it. The slow-moving man had finished making his calls. I've been talking to your father, and to Patricia, and I found out something you need to hear. I put down the report. Your mother told the whole family that the demand letter was settled, that you apologized, and tonight she's planning to use your name. Use my name how? In the speech, during intermission, she's written a thank you to the family, and she's going to publicly thank you, by name, for supporting Kelsey's dream. She's going to tell 200 people that you're on board, that you've always been their biggest supporter. I closed my eyes. The ceiling fan turned slowly above me. She's going to fundraise using my name, in front of 200 people, while I have a list pendants on her house. That's what I'm telling you. Patricia showed me the speech draft. Your name is in it twice. Our eldest daughter, Francine, who has always believed in Kelsey's gift. And the Thorne family stands united in support of Kelsey's career. My jaw tightened. She didn't just take my money and my health and my years. She was about to take my name, stand on a stage in front of the community and use me as a prop. The supportive older sister, the one who always comes through, while a legal filing sat at the county courthouse saying otherwise. Uncle Richard, are you going to be there tonight? I wasn't planning on it, but I think I should be. I'll be there too. He paused. What are you going to do? I'm going to correct the record. That's all. No scene, no yelling, just the truth. You want me there when you do? I want someone there who knows the facts. He agreed. We hung up. I stood in my apartment for a long time. Then I opened my closet. I put on a clean navy blazer over a white t-shirt, jeans, flats. I still couldn't wear heels, my cane by the door. She didn't just steal my money. She was about to steal my voice, and I was done being silent. The Weston Community Arts Center was warm inside and smelled like garlic bread and flowers, folding chairs in neat rows, a rented Yamaha Grand on the low stage, lid propped open, bench adjusted, white tablecloths on the reception tables in the back, a banner behind the piano, Kelsey Thorne, debut. I came in through the back. Uncle Richard was already there, standing near the exit in a gray sport coat, arms crossed. He nodded when he saw me. I nodded back. 180 people. Friends, neighbors, music community contacts, my parents' church friends, some of Kelsey's conservatory classmates. My mother had filled the room. She was good at that. Kelsey played the first half and she was extraordinary. Chopin, Debussy, a list étude that made the room hold its breath. She had real talent. That was never the question. The question was, who paid for the stage she played on? Intermission. The lights came up halfway. People stood, stretched, moved toward the catering tables. And then Vivian took the microphone. She wore a cream silk blouse and pearls. Her hair was blown out. She looked like a woman who had orchestrated everything, which she had. Thank you all for being here tonight. This is the beginning of something extraordinary for our family. She talked about sacrifice, about believing in your children, about the years of lessons and travel and dedication. She dabbed her eyes. Then she got to the line. And of course Francine, my eldest, who has always been our rock. Francine has generously supported. I stood up. Back row, cane in my right hand, the chair scraped against the floor and the sound cut through the room. My mother stopped mid-sentence. Her face went blank. Francine, sweetheart, I didn't know you were coming. The room pivoted. 180 heads turned toward the back row. I could feel it, the weight of collective attention shifting like a current. I didn't need a microphone. The room was small, and I'd spent my career speaking clearly on construction sites over diesel engines and jackhammers. My voice carried. I'd like to correct something. I haven't generously supported anything. I was never asked. I was told. Vivian's hand tightened on the mic. Francine, this is not the time. Over the past 7 years, I transferred $90,412 into accounts belonging to Douglas and Vivian Thorne for their roof, their kitchen, their property taxes, their plumbing, their landscaping. A murmur. Someone in the third row whispered, 90,000? A woman near the aisle put her hand over her mouth. I was promised my name on the deed of the family home, 43 times over 7 years, in writing. It was never added. Vivian's face was rigid. She's lying. She's always been jealous of... Instead, my parents took out a $120,000 home equity line of credit against the equity I helped build to fund this. I gestured at the room. The banner, the rented piano, the programs. When I was in the emergency room 3 months ago with a fractured pelvis, my mother told me to call an Uber. I spent 11 days in the hospital, not a single visit, and when I came home, they billed me $287 for dog sitting. Aunt Patricia stood slowly. Her face was gray. Vivian, is this true? Uncle Richard near the door. She told us Francine gave 5,000, total. Vivian opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. She's twisting everything. My attorney filed a lis pendens on the property last week. The bank has frozen the HELOC. I looked at the room. I'm not here to ruin anyone's evening. I'm here because my name was being used without my consent to raise money for a project built on my stolen equity. I turned, walked out. The cane clicked against the hardwood floor. Behind me, silence. Then the murmuring began. The showcase collapsed. Not dramatically. No one flipped tables or threw programs. It was quieter than that. Half the audience left during what was supposed to be the intermission break and simply didn't come back. Chairs emptied in clusters. Car doors closed in the parking lot. The second half of Kelsey's set was played to 80 people, most of whom looked like they wanted to be somewhere else. Aunt Patricia cornered Vivian backstage. I know this because Kelsey told me later. She was there, still in her performance dress, mascara running. You told me she gave 5,000, Patricia said. As a gift. I lent you 2,500 based on that, Vivian. My mother tried her usual deflection. Francine is dramatic, Patricia. She's exaggerating. But there's a problem with that defense when your daughter just named specific dollar amounts in front of 180 witnesses. 90,000 is not an exaggeration, Patricia said. That's a second mortgage. Douglas sat in a folding chair backstage with his elbows on his knees and his head in his hands. He said nothing. He'd spent 30 years saying nothing when it mattered. This was just the final time. Kelsey, still backstage, still in her black concert dress, looked at her mother. Did you know? Did you know what she paid for? Vivian. It's complicated, Kelsey. Your sister has always been difficult. $90,000, Mom. That's not complicated, that's math. The showcase raised $1,200 that night. The goal was $30,000. I was already home by then, sitting on my couch, Pepper on the cushion beside me. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollow and tired and sore in my hip, the way you feel after you finally set down something you've been carrying too long. Kelsey texted me at midnight. I didn't know. I'm sorry. It was the first honest thing she'd said to me in years. The week after the showcase, my parents hired an attorney. Not Nathan's caliber, a semi-retired general practitioner from Westport who mostly handled wills and fender benders. They couldn't afford anything better. The HELOC was frozen. Their savings, Nathan later estimated, were almost non-existent. Their lawyer reviewed the evidence and, from what Nathan told me, recommended settlement immediately. Her documentation is comprehensive, was apparently the exact phrase. Nathan laid out the math for me in his conference room, marker on whiteboard. House value, Approximately $480,000, based on the most recent appraisal, the one I'd paid for through the landscaping. Remaining mortgage balance, $180,000. HELOC balance drawn, $95,000. Available equity after debts, roughly $205,000. My claim, $90,412 in documented contributions, plus legal fees. Even a straight settlement at $90,000 meant they'd have to come up with money they didn't have. They couldn't refinance. The lis pendens blocked it. They couldn't take another loan. Their credit was compromised. The only option was to sell. If we go to trial and win a constructive trust, Nathan said, the court could award you a proportional ownership share. Given your contributions relative to the total equity built, that could be 18 to 20% of the property. I don't want to own part of their house. I know, but it's leverage. They settle for the full amount plus your legal fees, or we go to court and they lose a fifth of the home. On Douglas's desk, I learned this later, sat a tax delinquency notice stamped in red. Final notice. 3 months of unpaid property taxes. The same property taxes I used to cover for them. The math didn't leave room for pride. It didn't leave room for much of anything. There was one more thing. While Nathan handled the property claim, the personal injury case from the car accident was moving on a separate track. The other driver's insurer had accepted liability. That settlement was strong. $165,000, enough to cover my medical bills and then some. But Nathan flagged something during a routine review of my expenses. My hospital stay, surgery, 11 days inpatient, physical therapy, follow-ups, totaled $127,000. My individual insurance, the plan I'd been forced onto when my parents dropped me, covered a portion. But with the $6,500 deductible and 80/20 coinsurance, I owed $38,000 out of pocket. If I'd been on the family plan, the plan my parents removed me from without notice, my out-of-pocket would have been roughly $4,000. A difference of $34,000. Because my mother needed to adjust the premium. Nathan brought it up carefully. Your parents represented, at least implicitly through that email, that you were covered during the transition. You weren't, and the cost differential is documented. He filed a separate claim. Negligent misrepresentation regarding insurance coverage. It wasn't criminal, it was civil, and it was airtight. The email said Family Health Plan Restructuring. It didn't say we're removing you. My parents now face 2 legal actions, the property claim and the insurance claim, both documented, both grounded in facts they couldn't dispute without lying under oath. The accident settlement of $165,000 meant I wasn't in financial danger. I could cover my bills, keep my apartment, continue therapy. This was never about survival. It was about the principle that you don't drop your daughter from the insurance plan, ignore her in a hospital, bill her for her dog, and then borrow against her contributions to fund your other daughter's concert career. And face no consequences. Consequences had arrived. 2 weeks after the showcase, someone knocked on my apartment door on a Saturday morning. I wasn't expecting anyone. Margot was at a job site in New Haven. The physical therapist didn't do house calls. I opened the door. Kelsey stood in the hallway with a duffel bag over one shoulder and red eyes and no makeup, wearing jeans and sneakers I'd never seen her in before. She looked like a different person without Vivian's staging. "Can I come in?" I let her in, made coffee. She sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd built the spreadsheet, and wrapped both hands around the mug. "I asked Mom for the Venmo records," she said. "She wouldn't show me, so I asked Dad." She paused. "He cried." I didn't say anything. Pepper walked over and put his chin on Kelsey's knee, and she petted him absently, the way you touch something to keep your hands busy. "I want you to know, I didn't ask for any of this. The HELOC, the showcase budget, any of it. Mom just said we had the resources, but I should have asked where it came from. I'm 23. That's old enough to ask." "You're here," I said. "I found a part-time teaching position at a music school in Hartford. Piano in theory, ages 7 to 15. It doesn't pay much, but it's mine. And I applied for a teaching fellowship last fall. I got in. Mom doesn't know. She would have called it beneath me. Something loosened in my chest. A knot I hadn't known was there. And I'm sorry about the hospital, she said. I was at a rehearsal and Mom said, but it doesn't matter what Mom said. I should have come. I reached across the table and held her hand. She held mine back. First real contact in years. She wasn't perfect, but she was trying. And after 7 years of nothing, trying meant everything. It took 3 months from the Lispendens filing to reach a settlement. 3 months of lawyers on both sides exchanging letters, my parents' attorney advising them to settle, and Vivian refusing until the math forced her hand. Final terms: $90,412, the full amount of my documented contributions, plus $12,000 in legal fees. Total, $102,412. The insurance claim settled separately, $34,000 for the differential in medical costs, paid from the home sale proceeds. To pay, they had to sell the house. There was no other way. After the mortgage balance, the HELOC payoff, the settlement, the insurance claim, realtor commissions, and closing costs, Douglas and Vivian Thorne netted approximately $8,000 from the sale of a home they'd lived in for 26 years. They moved into a 2-bedroom rental in a neighboring town. The Sub-Zero fridge stayed with the house. So did the Steinway. Kelsey told them to sell it and use the money. Vivian refused. The new owners asked if the piano was included in the sale. It was. Vivian posted nothing on Facebook for 6 weeks, the longest silence of her digital life. Aunt Patricia demanded her $2,500 back. Uncle Richard stopped returning Vivian's calls. Douglas texted me once, a month after the sale closed. 5 words: "I'm sorry I never stood up." I read it sitting at the desk in my new home, a condo I'd bought with the settlement money and part of the accident insurance payout. 2 bedrooms, a small yard for Pepper, my name on the deed. I didn't reply to my father's text, not because I didn't want to, because I didn't know what to say yet, and I'd learned that saying nothing was better than saying something before you're ready. The new owners of my parents' house kept the kitchen I paid for. 6 months later, my pelvis had healed. The orthopedic surgeon said the screws could stay. Most people leave them in. I could walk without the cane. I could climb stairs. I could drive to job sites and stand on scaffolding and do my job the way I'd done it before the intersection on Route 57. I got promoted to senior structural engineer. My project manager said I'd earned it before the accident, but the paperwork had been delayed. When he told me, I didn't call anyone. I sat in my truck in the parking lot and let myself feel it for a minute. Then I drove home. Kelsey and I met for coffee once a month. A place in Hartford, halfway between us. She'd come straight from the music school where she taught. Kids' drawings sometimes stuck to her bag with tape. She told me about her students. I told her about load calculations and seismic retrofits, and she pretended to understand. We were careful with each other, like 2 people rebuilding a bridge they hadn't built the first time. It was slow, it was honest, it was more than we'd ever had. My parents and I had no contact, not out of hatred, out of self-preservation. I left the door open a crack, figuratively, but I wasn't going to stand in the doorway waiting for them to walk through it. I'd spent enough years waiting. Margot was still my emergency contact. She came over on Sundays sometimes. We'd cook. She'd bring wine in a bag and Pepper would sit between us and beg. The $287 dog-sitting invoice was framed on my hallway wall, not as a trophy, as a reminder that sometimes the smallest, pettiest thing is the one that finally tells you the truth about where you stand. It was the most important bill I ever received. People ask me if I regret it, if I feel guilty that my parents lost their home. Here's what I tell them. They didn't lose a home. They lost the equity I built. $90,000 of renovations and repairs and taxes and emergencies, all mine, all documented, all promised back in the form of a deed that never materialized. I didn't take something from them. I took back something that was always mine. The $287 bill was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because it started a lawsuit, because it ended a pattern. 7 years of writing checks and waiting for acknowledgement that was never going to come. 7 years of proving my value to people who'd already decided I was the supporting character in someone else's story. If someone treats you like an ATM, they're not treating you like family, and you don't have to accept it. You don't have to wait until the amount gets big enough to matter. It always mattered. Every time you swallowed the disappointment, every time you wrote the check, every time you told yourself they'll see eventually, it mattered. Set the boundary, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts, because the alternative is spending the rest of your life paying for a house you'll never own. I bought my own place, 2 bedrooms, a yard, a deed with one name on it, mine. My sister is teaching piano to 7-year-olds and she's happier than I've ever seen her. My mother hasn't spoken to me. My father sent one text. Margot still brings wine on Sundays. Pepper still sleeps at my feet. I'm not waiting anymore. Not for a phone call, not for an apology, not for my name on someone else's deed. My name is Francine Thorne, and I know exactly what I'm worth. That's my story. If you're still here, thank you, I mean that. Now I want to know, do you think I was too harsh? Or not harsh enough? Drop a 1 in the comments if you would have done the same thing. Drop a 2 if you would have handled it differently. And if this story reminded you of someone you love, or someone you need to let go of, share it with them. There's a story in the description that I think you need to hear next. It's about a sister who showed up to a wedding she wasn't invited to. Trust me, click it.